Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in this evening. We are so grateful, and we are super grateful to have our wonderful presenter this evening, Neil Levin. He is a board-certified clinical nutritionist, senior nutrition education manager, and product formulator for the natural foods product manufacturer Now Foods. Thank you so much, Neil, for being here with us.
Oh, thank you, Elizabeth. I appreciate Marlene's making this time available to us and having us be able to share information with all of you at home.
Thank you. So you have a wonderful topic to share with everyone this evening on digestion.
All right, let me get into it, and I'm going to go through it fairly quickly so I don't bore you, hopefully. And let's see what I got. Just a slide or two about our company. Now Foods has a mission providing value, the best quality for the best price in both products and services that empower people to lead healthier lives. That's why we often have a lower price than our competitors, even with products with trademarked ingredients that are exactly the same raw materials as our competitors. And we're actually the largest family-owned business in the natural products industry. One of our founders and board members, owners, is someone who lives on Bainbridge Island, by the way. So one of your local folks. And so we're going to talk about digestive support, enzymes, probiotics, and fiber. And first, we're going to talk about enzymes, which of course help us digest food. So enzymes are defined as catalysts. They make something happen easier and using less energy than would otherwise be needed. So every chemical process in the human body involves enzymes, literally millions of biochemical reactions every day. Now, digestive enzymes are produced by our bodies, as are metabolic enzymes. The digestive enzymes are specialized, so they break down foods into nutrients and waste, and we need them to absorb and deliver these nutrients to our bodies. But there's other enzymes in foods. These food-based enzymes are the ones that our body uses that are produced externally. And we get them from raw foods and supplements, and they help the body, of course, break apart foods into smaller digestible pieces. In order to digest protein specifically, we need enzymes that are called proteases, but they're also known as proteinases and proteolytic enzymes. There are different proteases produced in the body, in the stomach, and in the pancreas, and they actually work at different pH levels. Now, protein is the hardest thing to digest that we're going to eat. It takes longer, and it's more enzymes involved in digesting protein than other types of food component. Stomach acid and enzymes in the stomach and enzymes in the small intestine, specifically from pancreatic protease, are the key factors. So in the acidic environment of the stomach, there's negatively charged chains between amino acids removed by pepsin, which is a proteolytic enzyme, and it's only activated in an acidic pH. It unwinds proteins and breaks the bonds between them. I kind of use an analogy. If you think of a quilt and you want to tear apart a quilt, you would take apart the patches. And this is kind of that process in the stomach for proteins. And then in the small intestine, there's proteolytic enzymes from the pancreas, pancreatic enzymes. It's a neutral pH, so it's more alkaline, and it removes positively charged side chains between amino acids using the pancreatic enzyme trypsin. So this diagram kind of shows you how complicated it is. You start with the salivary glands and helping to digest part of the food, the starches and sugars specifically. Then hydrochloric acid and pepsin work in the stomach. The pancreas releases different enzymes in the small intestine. That's mostly where you digest proteins. And then there is some digestion occurring in the intestine and even in the intestinal wall. And then amino acids will enter the bloodstream, go to the liver, where they are processed and delivered to the rest of the body. Now, plant enzymes can help digest protein as well, and they actually work at different pHs than the enzymes produced in our bodies. There's also pancreatic enzymes we could take from animals. Now, you can't get them from cows because they have a different digestive system. So we have to get those from other animals. Pork would be the most common source. And if we take these pork pancreatic enzymes orally, it actually has been shown to inhibit our own production of those enzymes. So it replaces them rather than supplementing them. The plant-based enzymes always add to digestion, and they will not replace our own digestive enzymes. So plant enzymes are well known for adding to digestion, where pancreatic enzymes are well known for replacing our own. If you don't have a good pancreatic function, that might be necessary, but it's usually a stopgap method. And there's other things stomach acid does. If you don't have good stomach acid, you won't have your pepsin work in your stomach. But it's also an immune barrier that's acidic. It's an environment to promote acidophilus, which is a probiotic. It's Latin, it's a Greek name actually, means acid loving, acidophilus. And in order to take your vitamins and minerals from your food and from non-acidified mineral supplements like calcium carbonate, for example, you need good stomach acid. So stomach acid does more than help you digest food, but it does have a role in getting food from nutrients. For example, you won't get any B12 from your food if you don't have good stomach acid to pull it out of the food. So when you digest protein, about 60% goes into small peptides, which are chains of 2 to 3 amino acids long, called dipeptides and tripeptides. And about 40% are free amino acids. They're single amino acids that are not bonded to other amino acids. So breaking apart the protein, you want to get to this small peptide range of 1 to 3 amino acids together, because that's the only size that will go through a normal, healthy intestinal wall. Some of the peptides are actually broken down a little more from 2 or 3 amino acids together to single amino acids in the enterocytes, which are the cells lining the intestine. So it actually continues as it's passing through the intestinal wall. So when we're looking at amino acids, this is kind of a tinker toy version to show you what it looks like. But all the amino acids have a similar backbone called an amine and an acid group. That's where amino acid comes from. And they have a different side chain. So each amino acid has a different cluster of molecules attached to the same backbone. So the backbones can go together and make a long chain, but the side chains are unique for each amino acid, and that's what makes each one different. But this is how amino acids form together to make proteins. Now, the large peptides, more than 2 or 3 amino acids large, will not go through a healthy intestinal wall. The small peptides and the amino acids will. And this is a little more complex, but it kind of shows you a little more detail that only really single amino acids are the main amino acids entering the circulation. Now, amylase is an enzyme which is well known to be in saliva, for example, and it's also secreted by the pancreas. It converts carbohydrates into sugars that are used for energy and for structural materials. For example, glucosamine consists of glucose and an amino acid. So when you're taking a starch, you need amylase to break it down into simpler sugars so it can eventually become glucose or blood sugar. If you take sugar, you don't need amylase to break it down. So complex carbohydrates or starches will break down into simpler starches, which will break down into glucose or fructose or other simple sugars. so they can pass through the intestinal wall and into the bloodstream. Now, fat absorption is a little bit different because it uses lipase. And this is an enzyme that's produced in the pancreas as well, and it requires special processing. So it also helps absorption of not only fats, but fat-soluble nutrients like vitamin A, D, E, and K, and carotenoids, lutein, beta-carotene, astaxanthin, and even some plant constituents like curcumin and quercetin absorb better with fat. Alpha lipoic acid is another example. So what happened is dietary fat is actually formed into what are called micelles, which are little spherical combinations of fat particles. And fats have a head and a tail. And if you put the fat soluble ones in the middle and vice versa, you can end up with a sphere that is better absorbed. So this is how lipase helps you absorb fats. It actually helps you create these micelle spheres. And if you've ever seen a micellized fat soluble vitamin, they are more highly absorbable because they're pre-digested. So we can take digestive enzymes supplementally. Now, this is a list I made on a spreadsheet showing the variety of different enzymes. And if you look at that column, it says abbreviations. You can see there's a number of different capital letter abbreviations that are different symbols for different units. And enzymes are typically sold by activity units and not by weight. So that's an important consideration when you're looking at labels. And if you're looking down lower at the proteases, you might notice there's a protease with an HUT, there's a protease with a PC, there's a protease with an SAP, and there's also the pancreatin above there, which is a USP unit. Those are all units for proteins. So protein can be a USP unit, it can be a PC unit. Each different enzyme has its own unit. They're all rated differently. So you're going to see an alphabet soup of these ratings on product labels because each enzyme is tested for something different or a different pH or a different substance it's digesting. And that's why there's different rating for each one. The plant and animal ones, for example, are not equivalent because they work in different pHs and are rated differently. So plant enzymes can work in a wide pH range. We know that the pepsin in the stomach only works at a low pH of around 2 or 3. And we know the pancreatic protease, like trypsin, only work in a neutral pH around 7. So we can actually bridge that gap with plant enzymes. And we can digest fats and carbs in the stomach rather than waiting for them to get into the small intestine where the pancreatic enzymes will hit them, and actually encourage digestion. So plant-based enzymes really do augment our digestive system very well. One of the most common and popular ones is bromelain, a proteolytic enzyme. It digests protein. It's from the stem of the pineapple plant, and you can take it with food and digest healthy, have a healthy digestion. You could take it between meals and actually help it digest debris in the body. So it helps clean up like a demolition crew cleanup. So between meals, it helps with joint comfort and temporary soreness associated with muscle overuse. With meals, it will help you digest protein. Papaya enzyme, known as papain, is another enzyme that's common, and there's a number of similar proteinases or proteases in fruits, including bromelain. And we actually make a chewable papaya enzyme that includes papaya and pineapple and bromelain, and a few of what are called the fungal enzymes, the protease, lipase, cellulase, and alpha amylase, which kind of duplicate what's produced in the pancreas. Or a plant enzyme which combines a bunch of these fungal enzymes. They call them fungal enzymes because many of them are produced in fungal cultures. And we actually use these microorganisms as little factories to produce various substances. Amino acids are produced that way. Some vitamins are produced that way. Many enzymes are produced that way, using these fungal factories, using a culture to ferment and produce what we want. And one of the ones that are fairly popular from a lot of brands, not just now, is the NEC BioCore system. And they actually have a simulated digestive tract in a university in the Netherlands, where they can put in food and add the acids and enzymes and have everything duplicate what happens in human digestion. And they can see what happens by opening up any section and sampling and seeing what's going on, how well something works. So the BioCore system will not only add to digestion, but it can help with digestion that's diminished. So it's actually a laboratory tested digestive system that we have in our Chewyzymes and in some other products like Optimal Digestive System, where we're using those exact enzymes in the ratios that were successful in that study. So there's a chewable version and there's a non-chewable version. And the non-chewable version has alpha-galactosidase, which is the enzyme that's in Beano that helps to digest beans and cabbage. So we actually add that to this formula. And this is a very small capsule. I actually use this formula when I travel because it fits nicely in my multi-day vitamin pack, a tiny little capsule. Digest Ultimate's a larger capsule, but it has a lot more enzymes in there. And it's equivalent to some of the formulas from other brands, which, there's some excellent brands out there like Enzymatica. They're friends of ours and they make great formulas. Just because we compete, we're not going to knock our competitors who have good products. And of course, Marlene's knows good products because that's what they carry. So it's a combination that works full spectrum. And you can see how many enzymes are in this. And if you look, there's several proteases. The second one from the top is protease 4.5. Then there's a protease 6.0 and an acid stable 3.0. If you look down at the bottom, there's a neutral pH protease. We're actually stacking all these protein digestive enzymes to work in different pH ranges. So wherever they're encountering protein, they will digest it through the digestive tract. And we're also adding a lot of other enzymes to digest sugars and starches. There's a full dose of alpha-galactosidase in there to digest beans and cabbage. There's things to digest xylan, and there's bromelain in here as well. So you can see this is a massive formula. This is the one I use if I'm eating something that's really difficult to digest and I want to make sure I got all my enzymes in a row. It is a larger capsule though. Not huge, but larger than the tiny one. And betaine hydrochloride will, with acid stable protease, will mimic the stomach acid and pepsin that helps you digest protein in the stomach. But it will add stomach acid produced from beets. And fungal enzyme, the fungal pepsin is a replacement for the pork-derived pepsin, because now we have something that's not only food grade, but it's kosher certified and suitable for halal as well. Now, Gluten Digest is something that helps you digest the gluten and gliadinin that is in not only wheat, but in rye and barley as well. And gluten's also in oats, but gliadinin is not. And it actually increases the number of digestible gluten particles by almost triple. It goes from 100% to 177% addition. So what we suggest this is used for, not if you have celiac disease, but if you are going out to eat or you're eating at a friend's house or whatever, you can't control or know what's in the food you're buying, and you're sensitive to gluten, this is a way to minimize the discomfort you might feel from those events. And so support the digestion of small amounts of gluten that might be eaten inadvertently, or one of my colleagues, he'll go to a birthday party and have some cake, and he'll go to a pizza party, he wants a slice of pizza, he'll take this with it. He's not allergic or celiac, but he is gluten intolerant. And lactose intolerance is another issue. Tens of millions of Americans suffer from dairy intolerance. It's the most commonly known thing is deficiency in the enzyme needed to break down lactose, which is lactase enzyme. Excuse me, and our ability to digest lactose declines due to aging. It will typically decline through the puberty years, and genetics, damage to the GI tract, even diet, illness, stress can affect our ability to digest milk sugar. Now, milk products have protein and fat as well as sugar. So you need different enzymes to digest it. And some people actually have a hard time digesting certain milk proteins. Milk protein is 80% casein, and casein is one of the more difficult proteins to digest. Whey protein is far easier to digest than casein, which takes actually several hours to break down. So we make a formula that combines the enzymes that will digest a cup of milk and whole milk. And we've actually demonstrated this at trade shows where we take a cup of plain yogurt and empty a capsule on top, and they could see it eat through that capsule as it goes down. And probiotics do support lactose digestion. One thing is there's something in an enzyme in the milk product that is produced by the probiotic. It slows the GI transit, which helps digestion. And it helps with the intestinal functions and the microflora, the probiotics in the gut. It produces acid. The probiotics actually produce acid. They're called lactic acid bacteria. So the acid helps you digest as well. And looking a little more closely at the animal-derived enzymes, this is the pepsin and the pancreatin predominantly. So pancreatin you could buy by itself. You can get it in a formula. We're not the only ones with it. One thing to look at, it is in USP units for the actual enzymes like protease, but the pancreatin is sold in different X's. You can get a 4X, you can get a 6X, you can get a 10X, different concentrations. So if you get a 6X that's 200 milligram, you're only going to have 60% as much of the USP units. So again, the units are more important than the weights to know how strong these formulas are. And pancreatic enzymes have amylase for starches, protease for proteins, and lipase for fats, but they only work in the small intestine. Now we do combine these things together in a formula called super enzymes. And this is one of our most popular formulas. It does have bromelain, it has ox bile to help you digest fats, especially important if you don't have a gallbladder or you have any issues with that. It has the pancreatin from pork, it's got papaya and other enzymes in both capsule or tablet forms. And it's a relatively simple formula. We do add the acid stable protease, the fungal protease, and the papain to it to help it work better. But it does have a good pancreatic enzyme in there, along with the betaine hydrochloride, the stomach acid, and the ox bile. There's a lot of health practitioners who recommend this product, by the way. And it also comes in a tablet form. Slightly different strengths on there. The capsule is actually a little bit stronger because there's more tableting agents and things diluting it in the tablet version. But some people prefer one over the other. And you can see the pepsin is really a pretty large dose there. So that's what I had to say about enzymes. I want to switch and talk a little bit about probiotic bacteria for digestion and immune function. And one thing to stress is that each probiotic strain is different from the others. There are hundreds or thousands of strains of acidophilus and of bifidobacteria, but each one has a unique benefit that is proven in terms of being acid resistant, bile resistant, having effects on immunity, having other effects. they're specific to the substrain. So how do you know which one you have? It should be on the label, not just generic Lactobacillus acidophilus, but there should be a third designation with a strain. And they have to be identified by genetics. And the instrument that's used to do that is called a riboprinter. And to our knowledge, there's only one manufacturer in the United States with their own riboprinter that can identify the strains of probiotics sold to them by the growers. And guess who? Now Foods. So the only way to know the quality and value of probiotic strain is to know the name of the strain, not just the genus and species, and to know the studies, human clinical trials. What does it do? Not theoretical, but proven. So we have products like our Probiotic 10 line, very popular. They're free of the major allergens like dairy and soy and gluten. They're vegan friendly. Traditionally, probiotics are grown on gluten and soy and milk. So this is actually, having these allergy-free ones are only 10 or 15 years old that they've even been available. And when you look at the bottom left at the strains, Acidophilus LA14, Bifidobacterium lactis BL04, these are specific strains you can look up and see what they do. Now, these strains do not need special coatings to survive stomach acid. The strains that are used to culture yogurt, the Bulgaricus and Thermophilus strains, cannot survive stomach acid. But the modern probiotics like Acidophilus and Bifidus can. They survive very well. So if you were taking yogurt pills, you would want them to be enteric-coated. If you're taking probiotics, you do not need that. And here's one example. Here's a study looking at a couple of strains. The timing, whether on an empty stomach or after meal, did not affect the efficacy of probiotics. So a human study showing proof. And here's a lab study showing proof. Look at the acid tolerance for LA14. It's rated 4 stars, over 90% survival in hydrochloric acid and pepsin at a pH of 3 for an hour at body temperature. So you could see that these are really resistant to acid. And here's another strain that's acid resistant, the BL04. It helps with innate immunity. It helps with immune response as well. And here's when people get vaccinated, they're trying to get an immune response. There was actually a better immune response in subjects who took the Bifidobacteria lactis BL04 than people who didn't, who took placebo. So it worked better because there was more immunity. There's also chewable probiotics, and you could see that list of probiotics on the label are the same 10 strains. Again, you could look them up and see studies on them. So there's a chewable 2 strengths, one designed for kids and one for adults, and several clinically documented probiotic species, 10 strains, different strengths. You can get 2 billion or 10 billion per capsule. And they're sweetened with xylitol, and they have FOS, which is a prebiotic fiber. We also have a 9 strain called clinical GI probiotic. This is actually one of my favorite strains and one that I personally take because A, it's shelf stable, but B, it's 8 strains, including these ones I just mentioned, like LA14 and BL04, but it also has predominant the HN019 strain of lactis. So it has 2 strains of Bifidobacterium lactis. There's actually a third one at the bottom, the BB02. So the Bifidobacterium predominantly are anaerobic bacteria growing in the large intestine. And they are most responsible for liver detox. The Bifidobacteria are the main strains in very young children, for example, as well. And they're very important for maintaining our intestinal balance because a lot of the fermentation that occurs of fiber is happening by bifidobacteria in the large intestine. So this is a great strain, the HN019, but it's on top of 8 other strains that are 8 of them are also in our Probiotic 10 formula. So why are we using HN019? Out of over 2,000 strains that were reviewed by the New Zealand Dairy Research Institute, this was the top #1 strain. It's been subjected to test tube studies, animal studies, human studies, and 7 published review studies. And this is the most highly rated strain there is. There's a dose response effect on gut transit time, how quickly things pass through and you get a stool, and gastrointestinal symptoms in adults. So helping reduce frequency of gas bloating and improving transit time. And it survives well through stomach acid and bile. It's been shown to colonize the intestinal tract within a week with fecal analysis. It's safe and well tolerated, even given to infants at birth. Very few supplements can claim anything like that. And you could see on the left, compared to placebo, in 100 subjects, human clinical triple-blind randomized placebo-controlled study, that we see that there's a significant reduction in GI complaints compared to placebo. Discomfort, gassiness, and constipation. Significant improvement. And it survives stomach acid and bile. It colonizes. The numbers you see, look at the top row. Those are the number of the HN019s that are sticking to intestinal cells. And it does it better than other strains. And here's an example. If you take it for 28 days and stop taking it and test it again 7 days later, you can see on the left, there's still substantial amount of bifidobacteria there that is maintaining. It's actually colonizing. And on the right, you could see the immune activity increases when people are taking this strain. So enough about probiotics. Let's talk a little bit about fiber. Dietary fiber, often called roughage or bulk, is the part of the plant that we cannot digest or absorb. There's 2 basic forms, soluble and insoluble fiber. Soluble fiber dissolves in water and is fermented in the large intestine. And it's found in oat bran, fruits, beans, potatoes, potato, seeds, oranges, psyllium husk. Insoluble fiber will not dissolve in water, is not fermented in the intestine, the colon. It is found in wheat bran, corn bran, some nuts, cabbage, and root vegetables. You do not get fiber in animal products. Meat, fish, eggs, dairy have no fiber. So soluble fiber is the one that is useful for digestion. Insoluble fiber is useful for transit time and bulking the stool. So we're going to focus on the soluble or prebiotic fibers. So this is a substance that's not digestible to us, but it is digestible to our gut microflora, the bifidobacteria and its friends in the intestines. So it helps maintain the health of the cells. It also detoxifies because it gloms onto toxins and takes them out of the digestive tract. The liver is going to excrete toxins into the digestive tract, and there'll be toxins in our food that we're not absorbing as well, that you want to take out of the body. So the definition of a prebiotic is a non-digestible food ingredient that stimulates the growth or activity of bacteria in the colon. In other words, we can't digest it, but the bacteria can. And when the bacteria digest it, they convert it into short-chain fatty acids that act as food for the intestinal cells themselves. Intestinal cells require a ton of energy. They replace about every 5 to 7 days that layer around the intestine. the lining replaces constantly, and it uses a lot of energy to do that. And that's one reason why people take prebiotic fiber to fuel that activity, because the bacteria need food, and their food turns into food for the intestinal cells. So they're called resistant carbohydrates as well, because they resist digestion by our own digestive processes, but they are fermented by bifidobacteria and lactobacilli probiotics in the large intestine. Now, these probiotic bacteria are very responsive to dietary changes. If you change the soluble fiber level in your diet, within a few days, you will see a rapid increase or decrease, depending on whether you're adding more fiber or decreasing it. You'll see an increase or decrease relative to that in the probiotic population in the colon, in the large intestine. So it only takes a few days, and it's actually more important to have the fiber than to take probiotic supplements. You will not, it's kind of like if you have a lawn and you let it die. Yeah, you could water it all you want, nothing's going to happen. You have to keep it fed. And in the same way, the probiotics need to be fed or they will die. And what are they fed with? In the small intestine, sugar; in the large intestine, fermented fiber. So there's a couple kinds of pretty prominent prebiotic fibers. Inulin, which is extracted from plants that have like bulb bottoms. Jerusalem artichoke, chicory, agave are some of the more common ones. FOS is produced by fermentation of sucrose, typically from beets or sugarcane. And they're both non-GMO. The inulin is typically organic because it's extracted from a food. The difference is sourcing and processing. They're both chains of fructose. They both are very, very similar in their composition. It's just one is produced by fermentation and one is produced by plants and extracted from plants. If you cook these things, then you end up with something like agave syrup that ends up being, the fructose chains break apart into fructose, and you end up with a fructose syrup that ends up being a sweetener. So the starches, the fibrous starches here turn into sugars if you cook them or add enzymes to them, the right enzymes. But in our bodies, we can't digest them, and they turn into food for our probiotics. Now, probiotics also help mineral absorption, and it's from taking these fibers, and part of that might be that certain probiotics that are fed by these produce acids. They're lactic acid bacteria after all, like lactobacilli, and the acids help with mineral absorption. Now, Psyllium Husk is another popular fiber. It has a high level, as 70–80% soluble fiber. It's the chief ingredient in many of the bulk laxatives that are sold. It's from the seed husks of a plant that is typically found in India. We get our source from India. It's certified organic. It is sterilized with steam. It is tested for pesticides. It forms a viscous gel in the intestine, which has a bulking effect and helps you absorb fats. So fiber is one of the ways the body has of dumping cholesterol. Fat will attach to these fibers, and getting rid of excess cholesterol, which would be in the form of bile salts. If you're having fiber with your meals, some of those bile salts will be carried out of the body, and that's one of the body's main ways of getting rid of excess cholesterol, having enough fiber. Americans only get about 1/3 of the fiber we need. It's no wonder that so many of us are high in cholesterol and can't control it. The fiber is one of our controls. It also helps to delay the digestion and absorption of carbohydrates to help manage blood sugar better. Blood sugar doesn't spike as rapidly. You don't need as much insulin. So soluble fiber, this is an FDA allowed qualified health claim. Soluble fiber from foods like psyllium husk as part of a diet low in saturated fat and cholesterol can reduce the risk of heart disease. And you need 7 grams of soluble fiber per day to have this effect. So you can get certified organic, a very clean psyllium husk to use, the whole husk or the powder. They're just different particle size. We also have a non-psyllium fiber called fiber 3. It's 3 certified organic fibers. It's 80% golden flax, 10% acacia, and 10% inulin. And the acacia and inulin are both prebiotic fibers. And flax, of course, has omega-3 as well as fiber. It's a flax meal, so it's a whole seed. So it's psyllium-free. It's high in soluble fiber. It's about 50-50 soluble and insoluble fiber, so it's bulking as well. And about 4 grams of fiber per serving. So this is actually a nice, organic, clean, gentler one using flax instead of psyllium. Apple fiber is interesting because it's simply the fiber from apples. And 5 grams of fiber has about 1 gram soluble fiber. It's from the Pacific Northwest. It's from your region. From Fuji Delicious, Brayburn, and Honeycrisp apples. I checked on that to double check. So when you're going to your local farmers market, I've been at apple markets in Portland and in Olympia, and where they have 50, 100 types of apples. That's where the stuff's from. And apple pectin is the soluble fiber fraction, which is about 20% roughly of apple fiber. So this is extracted from apple fiber to give you the pectin. And pectin, of course, will help gel the stool. It's often used if you have kind of a loose stool, you might take pectin for that, but it is a soluble fiber. And glucomannan is another soluble bulk fiber sold in powder or capsules. It does have a claim for helping with serum lipid levels because fiber will help carry the cholesterol out of the body, as mentioned earlier. But if you take it before a meal, it gels up in the stomach and it makes you feel full. So it has a satiety benefit, feeling of fullness that can help with weight management or appetite control. And Gastro Comfort is a formula we make with Pepsin GI, which is a trademark ingredient, zinc carnosine complex, mastic gum, which helps with maintaining the stomach lining, organic aloe vera concentrate powder, 200-to-1 interleaf powder, which helps with, again, it's very gentle on the stomach. It helps soothe the stomach. And slippery elm, which is another mucilaginous substance that helps soothe the stomach as well. So we're talking about gastric health, just feeling better, and helping if there's a feeling of acidity in the stomach. Not as a true antacid though. If you need an antacid, let me suggest acid relief with enzymes, because it's calcium carbonate, which is the most common form of antacid, but we've combined that with the plant-based digestive enzymes. So instead of just stopping the stomach from making the acid, which you need to digest foods, maybe it's too much, or maybe the top of your stomach won't close properly, which keeps the acid down where it belongs. At that point, if you take an antacid, you're stopping digestion. And that's not so good. Well, how is your food in your stomach going to get digested if you take an antacid? This is a solution for both. It's acid relief, antacid with enzymes, so you can actually digest that food that's sitting in the stomach and not just shut down the digestion with an antacid. Now, I'm going to give you a little clinical pearl about antacids and acidity. When the timing of when you get heartburn is an important thing to look at in terms of whether you need an antacid or not. Because if you take some food and you immediately get acid, you might make too much acid, or it might be the hiatal hernia or something that the stomach won't close properly, and the acid spills up into the esophagus and burns. You're not supposed to have a lot of acid up there. But if it's 45 minutes, an hour into the meal, you're starting to get heartburn, that means the opposite. That means after a while, the top of the stomach's it's done. Digestion should be finished. It opens up and all that stuff's still churning in there. There's still a lot of acid. And what that typically means if it's a delayed heartburn is that you don't have enough acid to digest that food. So a lot of clinicians will give you HCl, hydrochloric acid, to take with your meal if you have a delayed heartburn, not an antacid. So even that acid that's too weak to digest the food is acidic enough to burn the esophagus, is the reason. So look at the timing. If it's immediate, you might need that antacid, but you might need enzymes too. If it's delayed, you might actually need acid. Even though it's burning, you might need acid to prevent that. It's kind of counterintuitive, but it's interesting. And the last thing I wanted to mention in this section is activated charcoal. Activated charcoal is a remedy. It alleviates gas and bloating. Ours is made from coconut shells that are roasted into charcoal. It helps alleviate gas and bloating. It helps attract toxins. If you call a poison control center, they might take you in certain, they might ask you in certain circumstances to take charcoal with it to absorb a toxin rather than inducing vomiting or something like that. And it's pretty inexpensive. It's probably less than $10 for 200 capsules. It's this is really a remedy to have in the cabinet, not something you take every day. And I just mentioned we do have some presentations on the Now webpage. You could see at the top the web page there, but it's the healthy living drop down. You can look at webinars. We have how to select probiotic products, protein digestion. There's a bunch of different topics there if you want to get a little more information. But I know you're busy. It's been most of an hour here. I'm gonna end here with that and hope that you've enjoyed the presentation, hope that you've learned something, and certainly thank you for joining this. I thank you for being a customer of Marlene's, and thank you for any support you give to the Now Food family of products. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Neil. That was a fantastic presentation. I learned a lot that I didn't know. And I know that our viewers here also learned as well. We do have a couple of questions in the chat box.
Yeah, I could see that. First of all, is there a test to see how well the digestive system is currently working? Well, some doctors can do tests for stomach acid and stuff, but you know what? Most people have a good clue of whether the digestive system is working or not. And it's kind of like, there is a test for vitamin C status. Then last time I checked, it was like $50. And the fact that everyone knows vitamin C is beneficial, and the vitamin C you could get for $5, $10, $15, a big bottle. Most people aren't going to test for that. So you'd be going to the doctor if you have some significant issues. You would not be going just to test your normal digestion. If you have gas or bloating, if you have transit time. Theoretically, you should have a bowel movement for every substantial meal you eat and within about 24 hours. So that's kind of a good gauge. And if you don't, then maybe you're constipated. Physicians will tell you that they'll recommend a laxative if you don't have a bowel movement for a week. That's a long time for everything to be sitting in there fermenting, maybe not fermenting with the right stuff. I think that's way too long. But they can test stomach acid and things. They can give you capsules you could take that'll send a reading back and things like that, these sophisticated things. Yeah, I think most people can kind of gauge without doing that by what's happening to them. And see if there's anything else here. I always imagine a sponge. Soluble fiber is the soft one that absorbs. Insoluble is the scrubby part. That's actually a good analogy. Thank you. The slides, do you guys post these slides? Or the presentation on your Facebook page?
Yes, so we are live streaming, so anyone that wasn't able to catch the beginning, they can tune back in there, and we can also upload this to our YouTube channel.
All right, so you can see this on Marlene's YouTube page, which will be great. I've actually been on there. It's a nice page.
Oh, thanks, Neil.
Is that you?
Yes, I've been constructing it. It's been a lot of fun.
Cool.
Well, folks, while we have our expert here, any more questions? What I thought was interesting was about the prebiotics, how our gut acid doesn't break that down. I thought that was just super fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, fiber is, I mean, they call it resistant fiber. So it's a resistant to digestion.
I love it.
But remember, we can digest it. We personally can't, but our allies living in our intestines can.
It's the food for our probiotics.
Right, they have to eat too. I mean, if you think of them like our livestock, our internal livestock, they need to be fed too.
We have to feed our gut garden.
The ones in the back 40.
Yeah.
I see we have a visitor from Canada on the line too. Someone I know.
Oh, that's amazing. Thanks so much for tuning in. Yeah, that's what's so great about these Zoom meetings is that we're able to stay connected. Neil, you were just telling me that you're located out near Chicago. So it's so great that we're able to continue these wonderful classes, getting great knowledge. And once we are able to have in person, we will have hybrid classes. So that'll be a new development.
Yes, I've actually done in-person classes at both of your locations more than once. So
yes,
always glad to see you folks. Federal Way and Tacoma.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good times, man. Well, thank you so much, everyone who tuned in on live and also here in the Zoom meeting. We super appreciate you, and definitely stay tuned for more great classes.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Thanks, everybody, for joining us.